Judge Kang Bit-na was brutally murdered in the park. Her soul left her body, and a path of blood-red flowers spread beneath her feet. She followed the path that led to the gates of hell, which opened for her. Despite being meant for the false hell, a glitch in the sinner categorization system sent her to the murderer's hell, where only the most unforgivable and unrepentant reside. The judge there, Justicia, marks the foreheads of murderers, sentencing them to the harshest punishments. This sight terrified the newly arrived Kang Bit-na. The assistant was puzzled as Kang Bit-na's name wasn't on the list, but Justicia, stubborn, treated her as a murderer. Despite the assistant's protests, Justicia seized the sword of judgment and stamped the guilty mark on Kang Bit-na, who vanished instantly. Moments later, Kang Bit-na found herself in a sea of flowers. Attracted to the scenery, she reached for a flower, but its center turned into a blood-red eye. Horrified, she saw these terrifying eyes everywhere. Before she could react, she saw a strange door, which sucked her in. She arrived at the Valley of Tender Hell, a place for serving long sentences. Here, Kang Bit-na was sentenced to 70,000 years. Monsters repeatedly hit the elevator, frightening her into fleeing. After turning several corners and pausing to breathe, a strange black mist appeared behind her. The monster could teleport and was incredibly fast, giving her no chance to escape. Fortunately, the narrow corridor trapped the monster's horns, preventing it from reaching Kang Bit-na. Kang Bit-na seized the opportunity to remove her shoes and thrust them fiercely into the monster's eyes. As the monster closed in, escape was impossible. At this critical moment, the door suddenly opened, flooding the area with blinding light. The monster vanished instantly upon contact with this force. Subsequently, Hell's chief executive, Baal, confronted Justicia, rebuking her irresponsibility for nearly condemning an innocent person to an irredeemable fate. Justicia insisted that a judge's role was solely to make decisions, not to entertain claims of innocence. This infuriated Baal, who immediately sentenced Justicia to go to the human world to judge 10 unrepentant murderers, claim their lives, and send them to hell within 1 year using Kang Bit-na's identity, or face death. Justicia attempted to resist, but was swiftly impaled by a spider's claw, making it clear that Baal was serious. Reluctantly, Justicia complied. Meanwhile, a demon approached the brutally murdered woman in the park, transforming into smoke and entering her body, thus reaching the human world in her form. When she claimed to be a demon from hell, the doctors diagnosed her with delusions. Unperturbed, Kang Bit-na, still a judge, appeared in court where the defendant was a police officer. He had subdued a fleeing suspect who suddenly pulled a knife. Officer Han Da-on had kicked the knife away and easily pinned the suspect against the wall. After the suspect was fined and released, he unexpectedly sued Officer Han Da-on, claiming that Han had injured his hand when kicking the knife away. Kang Bit-na immediately knew the man was just causing trouble. As a demon, she wasn't one to cater to such antics. Upon hearing that the victim couldn't eat because of the injury, she erupted in court saying he should just starve to death instead of suing. This shocked everyone present. However, Kang Bit-na didn't hold back. She further confronted the victim's prosecutor, questioning if the police were supposed to be invulnerable. She argued, should they have politely asked for the knife instead of kicking it? The prosecutor was infuriated by her remarks, chastising her for extreme rudeness. Kang Bit-na bluntly revealed that the criminal was a chaebol heir, openly clashing with him. Han Da-on was acquitted and tried to thank Kang Bit-na, but she was uninterested in being thanked for defending someone wrongfully accused. Later, Kang Bit-na went to a church and found Cha Min-jong praying there. It turned out she had been suffering from her husband's domestic abuse, often covered in bruises, yet she didn't want him punished. Kang Bit-na sensed something odd and urged her to tell the truth. However, Cha Min-jong was ungrateful and even called the police to accuse Kang Bit-na of harassment. When questioned by the police, Kang Bit-na stated she was a judge but didn't have her ID on her. While searching for her ID, she accidentally spilled her bag, and her diagnosis of delusional disorder fell out, leaving her unable to defend herself. She was taken to the police station, where Han Da-on was the officer in charge, clearing up the misunderstanding. At the trial the next day, Cha Min-jong's wounds were starkly visible, yet the abuser appeared very remorseful. He explained that he deeply loves his wife, but unconsciously hits her during arguments and threatens to kill her, claiming it's because he loves her so much he wants to die with her. These absurd statements amused Kang Bit-na. The prosecution requested a 1-year prison sentence for the domestic abuser, but the final verdict was pending. After the hearing, the abuser approached Cha Min-jong's parents and repeatedly apologized for his actions. This unexpected behavior shocked Han Da-on, who realized the man's courtroom promises were empty. Concerned he would reoffend if released, Han Da-on immediately informed Kang Bit-na about the abuser mocking Cha Min-jong's parents, urging her to ensure strict punishment. Kang Bit-na then spoke with Cha Min-jong's parents and learned that Cha Min-jong had submitted a non-punishment agreement out of fear. Kang Bit-na, a demon judge from hell, unexpectedly waived 2 years of his sentence and acquitted him on the spot. This decision instantly sparked widespread dissatisfaction. The abuser thanked Kang Bit-na repeatedly, unaware that he had become the prey of a demon. The most disappointed was Han Da-on, a police officer aware that the unreformed abuser would likely continue his violent behavior. He confronted Kang Bit-na for an explanation, but she stated everything was done legally without further clarification. Frustrated, Han Da-on decided to take matters into his own hands. The moment he handed the abuser a block of tofu, he threw it on the ground and warned him not to approach Cha Min-jong again, or he wouldn't let him off easily. The abuser agreed outwardly, but as soon as Han Da-on left, he reverted to his true nature and decided to take his anger out on his girlfriend. After learning that the abusive man was acquitted, Cha Min-jong hid in her room trembling. She blamed her parents for calling the police, feeling they had put her in greater danger. She feared certain death if the abuser returned. Han Da-on comforted her, assuring her not to worry, and gave her a smartwatch with an SOS button to press if she needed immediate help. Despite this, Cha Min-jong remained fearful and sleepless. In the following days, Han Da-on frequently checked on her. After several anxious days, Cha Min-jong finally felt relieved and decided to call her father to go out for some fresh air. Meanwhile, Kang Bit-na was unusually anxious, wondering why the abuser had not yet acted. She then used a mirror and her powers to write the abuser's name, causing his image to appear. He was seen holding a hammer and smiling, indicating he planned to act that night. Kang Bit-na was excited by this sight and covered the camera with tape. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Thinking it was her father, Cha Min-jong checked the monitor but saw only darkness, startling her. Remaining vigilant, Cha Min-jong asked the visitor to leave the items at the door. Once it was quiet outside, she cautiously opened the door, only to be grabbed and thrown to the ground by the abuser the next second. She tried to call for help, but the abuser quickly noticed and threw her smartwatch aside. He then brutally assaulted her. Meanwhile, Kang Bit-na, on her way, calmly checked the situation and saw that the abuser had struck. After he left, a despairing Cha Min-jong set up a stool. Preparing to leave this sorrowful world was exactly the outcome Kang Bit-na desired. She had died and come to the human world to atone. Only by eliminating 10 death row inmates could she return to hell, and the abuser was the first one she created herself. As he casually walked home, Kang Bit-na suddenly stopped him, saying she wanted to talk. Seeing that Kang Bit-na was alone, the abuser let his guard down, unaware of the danger posed by beautiful women. Her eyes emitted a purple glow as she prepared to bewitch him, but suddenly a car appeared, driven by police officer Han Da-on. He knew the abuser had beaten his girlfriend again and angrily wanted to teach him a lesson. Fortunately, Kang Bit-na stopped him in time. They then went to Cha Min-jong's house, which bore the marks of the abuser's violence. If not for Kang Bit-na having the abuser released, this tragedy might have been avoided. However, Kang Bit-na seemed indifferent. Han Da-on decided to apply for the abuser's arrest and ensure he would be imprisoned for a long time. This news gave Kang Bit-na a headache. At the police station, the abuser desperately justified his actions. Upon hearing that Cha Min-jong had attempted suicide by hanging, he became nervous. But luckily, the police discovered her in time and she was not seriously harmed. The police were powerless against this scum and could only arrange 24-hour protection for Cha Min-jong. Han Da-on also kept an eye on the abuser, making it impossible for Kang Bit-na to kill him. Soon, a judge dismissed the arrest warrant for the abuser, leaving the police frustrated. In contrast, Kang Bit-na was delighted as she finally found an opportunity to act. Han Da-on visited Cha Min-jong's home again to warn them to be extra careful and assured them of enhanced protection. As soon as he left, the abuser peeked out from the stairwell. He first smeared the surveillance camera, then pulled a hammer from his pocket. Just as he was about to strike, Cha Min-jong sent him a message to meet. The abuser, ungrateful for the message, planned to kill her parents, thinking a few months in prison was worth it. Cha Min-jong told him she couldn't leave because the police were at her house, suggesting they meet at midnight when everyone was asleep. The abuser agreed, finding her idea sensible, and decided to keep the appointment. When the moment to hunt arrived, Kang Bit-na dressed in a pink mini-skirt and applied delicate makeup. Soon the abuser arrived, initially intending to greet with his hammer, but he was shocked to see Kang Bit-na and quickly hid the hammer. The judgment from hell began. Realizing something was wrong, the abuser tried to escape. Kang Bit-na watched him with a slight smile. Following his original path, the abuser somehow ended up in a strange room decorated with eerie patterns. As he panicked, Kang Bit-na appeared from behind. The roles in the story of the abuser and Cha Min-jong were reversed, with the abuser becoming the victim. On their first date, the abuser merely said he was full, which Kang Bit-na took as ignoring her. Before he could explain, Kang Bit-na lost her temper, stuffing food into his mouth. Angry and wanting to break up, he was taken aback as Kang Bit-na suddenly knelt down, begging for forgiveness and promising not to repeat her actions. She claimed she couldn't live without him, then staged a suicide threat. Thus, the abuser was completely controlled. Unable to tolerate it any longer, he brought up breaking up again. Kang Bit-na responded with a slap. The abuser was no match for her. Terrified, he trembled as he was beaten up. But Kang Bit-na didn't stop there. Instead, she picked up a baseball bat she had prepared earlier and continued to beat him. He hid in a corner and called the police for help. But Kang Bit-na quickly caught up and soon smashed the door lock. The abuser quickly moved out, thinking he had finally escaped the nightmare. But Kang Bit-na found him again. She threatened him with a knife, warning him not to call the police again, or she would kill him. She then changed her demeanor and told him to eat quickly. The man wanted to press his emergency alert watch, but Kang Bit-na warned that if she was arrested again, they would both end up dead the next time she was released. The price for his attempt to call for help was another brutal beating. The abuser desperately pleaded for her to let him go. The more he begged, the angrier Kang Bit-na became. To prevent him from leaving, she broke his legs with a hammer. After that, he lived in hell, confining himself at home and trembling at the sound of Kang Bit-na's voice. Eventually, he could no longer endure and decided to escape this painful world for good. But then he returned to reality and fully realized his own excessive behavior, though he remained defiant. Kang Bit-na, furious, slapped him hard and revealed her demonic nature. Terrified, the abuser begged for mercy. However, when Kang Bit-na was distracted by a phone call, he seized the opportunity to attack her with a hammer. The seemingly frail Kang Bit-na was quickly overpowered. As he strangled her more forcefully, he didn't realize Kang Bit-na was only toying with him. She grabbed his hair and dragged him outside. After breaking his fingers, she brutally hammered his head. As a demon, she knew no mercy. After torturing him severely, Kang Bit-na was about to take a breath when the abuser stood up again. His struggle only excited her more, fulfilling his deserved fate. After the severe beating, the abuser could no longer resist. He knelt down, repeatedly apologizing and confessing all his crimes. The final judgment arrived when Kang Bit-na stamped his forehead, opening the gates of hell. The soul of the abuser was sucked into hell, marking her first capture. When the police found him, his body was horribly mutilated with a distinctive mark on his forehead and long drag marks in the yard. It was clear he was killed inside the house and then discarded at the front door like trash. Strangely, though the house was the crime scene, professionals could find no evidence. Unknown to them, the murderer was a demon, and the cleanup was handled by a professional team from hell. Kang Bit-na left the body at the front door to demonstrate the fate of evildoers, and to observe the police's confusion over the lack of clues. The police were indeed troubled. The abuser had multiple fractures, but the key cause of death was excessive bleeding. Investigations revealed that the mark on his head was Chthonic Valley, meaning hell in ancient Greek. After complicating the investigation for the police, Kang Bit-na began searching for her next target. To find an utterly wicked criminal, she had to painstakingly review many old cases. Her assistant suggested she seek police help, but the only officer Kang Bit-na knew was Han Da-on. She had already left a bad impression on them. Then, the principal called her to his office, knowing that Kang Bit-na had just been discharged from the hospital with possible post-trauma effects. He warned her to behave appropriately and even criticized her attire and makeup, emphasizing that a judge should care about appearance. That day, as Han Da-on was about to go home, Kang Bit-na suddenly appeared, intent on finding clues to catch a criminal and return to hell. She approached him, but Han Da-on, already annoyed, did not want to engage with her. However, Kang Bit-na persisted until he agreed. Being a demon, she could easily read minds. Under her persuasive words, Han Da-on gradually lowered his guard. Kang Bit-na then brought up the main topic, asking about any difficult cases he had, but he said they were confidential and refused to share. Kang Bit-na did not give up. After getting Han Da-on drunk, she asked the same question again. This time he revealed the truth. The most wicked criminal was himself, having killed 3 people. Kang Bit-na was thrilled by this unexpected discovery, but seeing tears rolling down his face, she couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. When Han Da-on woke up, he found the scene had been cleaned. Kang Bit-na appeared before him, asking whether his last night's confession was due to drunkenness or sincerity. Realizing he had lost composure, he asked her to keep his secret, effectively admitting his guilt. With that, Kang Bit-na easily identified her second target and, without hesitation, stabbed him. After killing Da-on, Demon Kang Bit-na was about to brand the corpse with guilt when suddenly many spiders emerged from the ground. As the mist swirled, the Hell Manager Baal appeared, stating that Da-on was not a sinner. Hearing this, Kang Bit-na knew she couldn't escape punishment. Indeed, her mistake led to her punishment increasing from judging 10 sinners to 20 within a year. Fortunately, Baal reversed time before leaving, causing Da-on's blood to flow backwards and heal his wounds, resurrecting him instantly. However, the memory of death remained, so facing Da-on's terrified expression, Kang Bit-na didn't bother explaining. She simply extended her hands. In the next scene, a female detective was making Da-on blow into a breathalyzer. Given his miraculous resurrection and his drunken state from the night before, the detective thought he was still drunk. When asked why Kang Bit-na willingly put on handcuffs, she quipped that she thought he'd like it, which made her colleagues look at her as if she were a freak. Da-on was beyond defense. Just when Kang Bit-na thought the incident had ended perfectly, Da-on's voice suddenly filled the square, asking to talk to her. Reluctantly, she took him under a bridge and confessed that the real Kang Bit-na had died 3 months ago, and that she was merely a demon possessing her body. To prove her claim as Da-on expressed doubt, she extended her left hand and her pupils turned purple, summoning the Sword of Judgment. Da-on immediately looked to nearby surveillance cameras, but with a mere glare from Kang Bit-na, the cameras were destroyed. She then grabbed Da-on's phone and completely erased the recording. She warned him not to appear before her again. That was his true time of death. Meanwhile, a family of 3 was driving along the coastal road when the son suddenly complained about a foul smell in the car. The stepmother attributed it to the father's drunken stench and casually opened the sunroof. However, as she looked forward again, the car plunged into the sea. Although the impact woke the father, the seatbelt seemed jammed and wouldn't come out. He had no choice but to first lift his wife and child out the window before desperately tugging at his seatbelt. By the time his wife had taken the child to shore and turned back to swim to the car, the sunroof had inexplicably closed. She could only watch helplessly as her husband drowned. The account of the accident, however, came solely from the wife's perspective. Her mother-in-law harbored resentment towards her, blaming her for her son's death, and even went so far as to take away her grandson, leading the woman to sue her in court. The judge for the case was the demon Kang Bit-na. The grandmother was very emotional, wanting custody of her grandson, but Kang Bit-na had no interest in the case since there was no murderer to judge. However, as the grandmother became more agitated, she blurted out something that excited Kang Bit-na. "You already took your ex-husband's apartment. Why do you want my son's life insurance too?" The scene shifts to Kang Bit-na rushing back to her office, eagerly opening a mirror and writing the woman's name on it. The next second, the woman appeared in the mirror. Although she appeared normal, Kang Bit-na was thrilled. She first visited the woman's kindergarten, witnessing her gentleness and patience, and then, through conversation, learned that the grandmother had abandoned her family when her son was very young. She only reappeared after having a grandson. Of the $3 billion insurance money left by her husband, $1.8 billion was for herself and $1.2 billion for the child, leaving nothing for the mother-in-law. This is why she fiercely fought for custody. This outcome deeply disappointed Kang Bit-na. Just then, Han Da-on appeared, and she vented all her anger on him, threatening to send him to hell right then. However, to her surprise, Han Da-on showed no fear and even pulled away from her grip, arguing that if she could really kill him, he would not have been resurrected that day. Left with no choice, Kang Bit-na had to follow him to the woman's mother-in-law's house. The old lady was as irascible as ever. However, Han Da-on, being an experienced detective, gradually got her talking. It turned out she believed the woman had killed her son because she saw her being intimate with someone else on the day of her son's funeral. She took the grandson because, upon visiting her son's home, she found it in a state like a dump, and the child had been left alone for 3 days. Despite the wife's prior statements, Kang Bit-na did not believe this narrative. As she was about to leave, Han Da-on suddenly took out a cross necklace from his neck and used the pretext of having the child take her to buy medicine nearby, giving Kang Bit-na a chance for a private conversation with the child. The child invited Kang Bit-na to see his drawings. Reluctantly, she looked at a bunch of childish drawings until one caught her eye. It depicted a woman placing a pillow over someone's head. Kang Bit-na asked if the figures were him and his stepmother, but the boy did not answer, evidently threatened by the stepmother. Under Kang Bit-na's patient reassurance, the boy finally revealed a shocking truth. On the day he went to pick up his father, he saw his stepmother applying glue to the seatbelt. The foul smell in the car was from the glue. After they both got out of the car, the stepmother used a remote to close the car's sunroof, trapping his father who couldn't escape the glued seatbelt. The boy had kept silent because the stepmother threatened him, saying his grandmother would be the next victim if he didn't repeat her version of events. Upon learning the truth, Kang Bit-na's face began to tremble uncontrollably. However, she needed to make a decision about custody before bringing the culprit to justice. In court, she granted custody to the woman, but afterward, she wrote the woman's name on a mirror, just as she saw her abusing the boy. The reason was the stepson's failure to reject his grandmother taking him away. Suddenly, several events unfolded. Han Da-on rushed to the woman's house upon receiving a message and started banging on the door, while an elderly person in the countryside suddenly collapsed, holding a bottle of ginseng wine from an unknown sender. In front of the mirror, Kang Bit-na uttered, "She's dead," and then suddenly appeared before the woman, who was now in a desolate area. The man had married a woman 40 years his junior, forced to drink various tonics every night. When he fell into a deep sleep, his wife would inject him with something. A month later, he completely lost his sight. His wife then pretended to drop her phone while taking photos on a hike, instructing him to face downwards, and gently pushed him. The man's property, worth 1.5 billion won, was transferred entirely to the woman's name. Even because she was a kindergarten teacher, the police harbored no suspicions. This made her even greedier. After remarrying a single father, she immediately took out a 3 billion won insurance policy on him. 6 months later, while her husband was drunk, she applied glue to his seatbelt. She then opened the sunroof, drove the car into the sea, and deliberately rescued her stepson to appear as a virtuous wife and mother. After closing the sunroof, the 3 billion won seemed secured. However, she never expected that her stepson would tell Kang Bit-na about her wicked deeds. When she tried to punish her stepson, she unexpectedly received a call from a woman claiming to have evidence of her involvement in the deaths of her 2 husbands. The call successfully distracted her, allowing the stepson to escape and seek help. Meanwhile, the woman went to the location where her husband's car had plunged into the sea and witnessed a bizarre scene. A car emerging from the sea, shockingly the one she used to harm her husband. As Kang Bit-na stepped out of the car, the woman's expression of terror turned to curiosity. Even when Kang Bit-na confronted her about her crimes, she feigned innocence. In response, Kang Bit-na slapped her, visibly angered not only by her denial, but also by her attempts to harm her stepson. For such an unrepentant criminal, Kang Bit-na had a specific punishment in mind, to let her experience the victim's ordeal. As a woman who had plotted against two people, she only began to recover from a desperate suffocation when she suddenly found herself on a cliff. After sensing the woman's ultimate despair, all Kang Bit-na had to do was release the scarf in her hands, and the woman would once again taste death. Her treatment of the stepson was evil. As she repeatedly had her face covered with a pillow, she finally felt the despair of being unable to resist. Kang Bit-na, outraged by such demonic acts, added to her punishment. She covered her head with clothing and pummeled her furiously until her face was unrecognizable, then paused only when the sword of judgment reappeared, signaling the end of her punishment. Kang Bit-na branded her once more with the mark of the demon, and the gates of hell opened again on a vending machine. The next second, the woman was dragged inside, facing thousands of years of punishment. The scene shifts to two men cleaning up the site. With the help of magic tools, they quickly cleared everything. However, Kang Bit-na made an excessive request to leave the body at the police station's door. She did this to catch the attention of Detective Han Da-on. As expected, she was soon summoned to the police station because the victims of two recent homicides were defendants she had just judged. Despite her brazen acts, Kang Bit-na had her excuses ready. She handled over 200 cases a month, not all of whom had died. Hearing this, Han Da-on was helpless. Just as he was about to leave work, Kang Bit-na unexpectedly showed up asking for a ride home. Although she did this to tease Han Da-on, she was unaware that she had grown accustomed to his presence. According to the rules of hell, a demon that develops feelings for a human is doomed to die. However, Kang Bit-na was oblivious to this rule. Even when she encountered an old man after getting out of the car, who sternly warned them about meeting again in the future, she didn't realize the gravity of her situation. Both believed that if one of them were to die, it would likely be Han Da-on. Clearly, neither planned to heed the old man's warnings, and their relationship was set to grow even closer. Kang Bit-na, while searching for her next judgment target, learned of a serial killer who had murdered 13 people and remained at large. The only person who had seen the killer's face was a 10-year-old child 20 years ago, who is now Han Da-on. Later, Han Da-on found a crushed can beside a vending machine, identical in shape to those crushed by Kang Bit-na. To gather evidence of Kang Bit-na's crimes, Han Da-on deliberately moved into the apartment across from hers. Although Kang Bit-na called him a pest, her heart suddenly began to race the next moment, and she felt an intense pain. This was the first time in her centuries as a demon that she had experienced pain, and she fainted into Han Da-on's arms. When Kang Bit-na woke up from her coma, she found herself in a hospital bed. Instead of thanking Han Da-on, she rushed to her doctor to inquire about her health. The diagnosis she received was that she was love-struck and did not require hospitalization. At that moment, Gremory sent her an important message. According to Gremory, apart from them, there was another group of demons from Hell and Soul. They met weekly to exchange information. Originally, an angel, Lucifer fell and took charge of Hell. However, one day Satan, who also belonged to the second tier of leadership, started a rebellion. Failing in his rebellion, Satan stole Lucifer's gem. During the pursuit, Satan was injured and went missing, and the gem fell to earth. Gremory reminded Kang Bit-na that helping Lucifer and Baal recover the gem would not only bring a handsome reward, but also end her suffering on earth. Hearing this, Kang Bit-na immediately went to the meeting place with two assistants. Unknown to her, Han Da-on had followed her. Han Da-on was horrified to find the place full of demons. These demons had mastered various crafts to blend in on Earth, including grilling with forks, cracking walnuts with a demon's hammer, and a female demon who was skilled with knives. When a human intruded into their territory, one of the demons transformed a weapon to kill Han Da-on. Fortunately, Kang Bit-na quickly claimed that Han Da-on was her driver, saving his life. Additionally, Kang Bit-na revealed her true identity as Justicia from the murder hell. All demons began to worship and respect her. Now, Han Da-on finally believed that Kang Bit-na was indeed a demon. Kang Bit-na asked Han Da-on to leave immediately, since his human identity could not be hidden for long. However, Han Da-on ignored her advice and instead joined the demons in a charity event. During the event, a male demon was moved to tears by an old lady, which Han Da-on witnessed. For a demon, crying over humans is a capital offense. Consequently, he made a deal with Han Da-on. He knew Han Da-on was human but would not reveal it, and vice versa, Han Da-on must keep the demon's tears a secret. Late at night, the police received an emergency call and found a family of 4 murdered, except for the man who claimed he was the caller and didn't know the murderer. However, his demeanor suddenly changed, and he confessed to the killings, indicating an apparent case of split personality. At the police station, he cried, claiming he remembered nothing. Han Da-on conducted an individual interrogation with the man, who quickly switched to another personality. The primary personality was the timid Ryang Xiangbin, while the second was the psychotic Gu Daiwan. During the interrogation, the second personality readily admitted to the murders, claiming the victims had disrespected the primary personality. Given Ryang Xiangbin's condition, the police were unsure about the truth. However, under precise diagnostic tools, the easy switching between Ryang Xiangbin's personalities startled the police. Soon after, the results of his psychological evaluation were released. The report indicated that Ryang Xiangbin's amnesia, or multiple personalities, could not be completely ruled out. This meant the police could not take any action until they determined whether he was genuinely ill or pretending. Han Da-on conducted a second interrogation with Ryang Xiangbin, who claimed to have no recollection of recent events. Then, Han Da-on deliberately mentioned his dual personalities and intentionally mispronounced one of the names, altering the surname. Ryang Xiangbin did not notice the detail and corrected the surname himself. Han Da-on did not pursue further and sent him back to the detention center. Meanwhile, Kang Bit-na learned about the case and sent Gremory to investigate the murderer's name. Just as Kang Bit-na was about to use her demonic powers to check on Han Da-on, Valak appeared with a name. As Kang Bit-na wrote down Ryang Xiangbin in a mirror, she quickly saw all his actions. Valak warned Kang Bit-na that the criminal was special and likely acted during a psychotic break. If the crime was committed under such circumstances, a hasty judgment by Kang Bit-na might lead to punishment from Baal, who had already spared Kang Bit-na once. Another mistake could endanger her life. In the detention center, Ryang Xiangbin's mother-in-law visited him. Initially, Ryang Xiangbin appeared pitiful and claimed innocence, nearly convincing his mother-in-law that someone else was the killer. However, his second personality soon emerged, threatening to kill the old lady once he was released. This behavior of Ryang Xiangbin was noted. Ryang Xiangbin's behavior suggested he had multiple personalities. The police reviewed the case and noted that Ryang Xiangbin's son had been stabbed 13 times, resulting in severe damage to the body. A peculiar detail was that only the young boy's phone was found at the scene and it was badly damaged. No other phones were discovered, adding mystery to the case. Typically, another judge would handle Ryang Xiangbin's trial, but Kang Bit-na took over to fulfill her mission. On the day of the trial, Ryang Xiangbin initially appeared normal, with his lawyer signaling him to remain silent. However, his second personality became agitated and demonstrated a personality switch in court, which was a first for Kang Bit-na. Valak advised Kang Bit-na against rash actions, warning that mistakes could be fatal. Nonetheless, Kang Bit-na assured there would be no errors and knocked out 2 guards that night before confronting Ryang Xiangbin. As Kang Bit-na was about to punish Ryang Xiangbin, Han Da-on suddenly appeared from under the bed, startling her. Despite his preparation, Han Da-on was unable to stop Kang Bit-na from escaping. During the second trial, Kang Bit-na allowed Ryang Xiangbin to make a final statement. He tearfully claimed he had no memory of committing murder. Just as Kang Bit-na was about to judge, Han Da-on arrived with a recording from the deceased boy's phone. Although the phone was damaged, the cloud backup was intact. Han Da-on played the recording in court, revealing Ryang Xiangbin's voice during the crime. Ryang Xiangbin had a history of domestic violence, and when his son tried to call the police, it enraged him. He brutally attacked his son without regard for familial ties. Just as the boy stopped moving, the wife returned home, and Ryang Xiangbin took the opportunity to kill her as well. Their young daughter woke up due to the noise and was also murdered. The evidence provided by Han Da-on was sufficient for Ryang Xiangbin's punishment. This unexpected development infuriated Kang Bit-na. If Ryang Xiangbin were convicted, she would be unable to judge him herself. Keen to leave the human realm quickly, Kang Bit-na decided to disregard everything and acquitted Ryang Xiangbin. Before announcing the verdict, however, she allowed Ryang Xiangbin to make another statement to demonstrate his multiple personalities. Kang Bit-na dismissed Han Da-on's evidence as untimely and acquitted Ryang Xiangbin, but ordered him to undergo 2 years of psychiatric detention. This verdict shocked everyone, especially Han Da-on, whose eyes reddened with anger. Kang Bit-na noticed his expression and was about to leave when she suddenly felt a sharp pain. As a demon, she did not understand what it meant, but it was clearly not a good sign. On the way to the rehabilitation center with Ryang Xiangbin, Han Da-on decided to accompany them. Suddenly, a truck collided head-on with the transport vehicle, overturning it. 2 demons jumped out, knocked out the police, and attempted to abduct Ryang Xiangbin, while Han Da-on was powerless to stop them and was beaten. These lower-level demons were sent by Gremory, who was following Kang Bit-na's orders. That night, Han Da-on confronted Kang Bit-na, demanding she admit that the mysterious attackers during the day were acting on her command. Kang Bit-na flatly denied this. Knowing Kang Bit-na was planning something, Han Da-on picked up a small stool. Han Da-on sat at Kang Bit-na's doorstep, prepared to keep watch overnight. However, he underestimated Kang Bit-na's tactics. She had Valak change his voice to mimic hers, and then converse with Han Da-on through the front door. In reality, Kang Bit-na had already escaped through a window. Later, when Ryang Xiangbin regained consciousness, he saw Kang Bit-na. She picked up an axe and chased him, causing him to panic and flee. No matter where he ran, Ryang Xiangbin couldn't escape Kang Bit-na's grasp. In another frantic escape, he checked his hand, and was shocked to find that the wound had disappeared. This illusion made the experience feel real to him, but he was unaware that Kang Bit-na's punishment was just beginning. He tried to escape by getting into an elevator, only to be slow to react and ended up scolding the woman who was wearing a hat. However, the next second, when he realized it was Kang Bit-na, his bravado vanished, and he cowered in the corner. Kang Bit-na closed the elevator doors and turned to unleash a barrage on Ryang Xiangbin. Desperate, Ryang Xiangbin tried to pry the elevator doors open to call for help, but when the doors opened, he found himself back where he started. After running away again, he ended up back at his house. He mimicked the actions his son had taken, attempting to record, but met with a more severe retribution than he had inflicted. Ryang Xiangbin's mentality rapidly deteriorated, and his injuries vanished. Kang Bit-na suspended him in midair, declaring that the real trial had just begun. At this point, Ryang Xiangbin became wildly irate, thinking that after killing so many, why couldn't he overpower even a female judge? However, his thoughts were idealistic, the reality harsh. Kang Bit-na threw Ryang Xiangbin over her shoulder, knocking him to the ground. She was relieved that she hadn't carried out the punishment at the hospital that night, as it would have been too easy a death for Ryang Xiangbin. While punishing him, a fire burned inside Kang Bit-na, fueled by Han Da-on. If it weren't for Ryang Xiangbin, Han Da-on wouldn't have called her a bad person. Kang Bit-na unleashed all this fury on Ryang Xiangbin. She stabbed him throughout the night, from dusk till dawn. Ryang Xiangbin admitted all his guilt. It was time to end everything. Kang Bit-na conjured the blade of punishment. Normally, she would kill first and then stamp, but this time, she chose to stamp first. She let Ryang Xiangbin endure immense pain before stabbing him with the blade. As the gates of hell opened, Ryang Xiangbin's soul was drawn in. At 7 a.m., Han Dan saw Kang Bit-na walking out of the room. Right after greeting her, he received news of Ryang Xiangbin's death. Han Daeon stared at Kang Bit-na, puzzled by what had happened. Meanwhile, Kang Bit-na left with the poise of a victor. Like the previous 2 murders, the same brand was stamped on the forehead, and the body was left within the jurisdiction Han Da-on supervised. That evening, Kang Bit-na, Gremory, and Valak gathered. The slides showed information about Kang Bit-na. According to Valak's research, Kang Bit-na had been a loner and a studious student. Her parents had emigrated while she was in college. She was a conscientious judge later in life. As for the cause of her death, it remains an unsolved case with the police. On the other side, Han Da-on's investigation into Kang Bit-na hit another snag. He thought of the male demon who had given her his business card last time and decided to seek advice from the club. Upon arriving, however, Han Da-on was horrified to discover that the male demon had committed suicide. Remembering the demon's statement that crying was a capital offense, Han Da-on suspected that Kang Bit-na had overheard this and acted on it. What Han Da-on didn't know was that Gremory, acting on Kang Bit-na's orders to track and observe, had killed the male demon. Gremory, having overheard the demon's conversation, temporarily shifted his surveillance target to him. During this time, Gremory discovered the demon was romantically involved with a human. Both crying and falling in love were punishable by death. Thus, Gremory confronted the demon at his home, using his girlfriend as leverage to force his return to hell for punishment. To avoid implicating his girlfriend, the demon chose suicide, and his soul returned to hell. Although Gremory served Kang Bit-na, she was also responsible for monitoring demons' emotions. The cleanup team, while clearing Ryang Seongbin's bloodstains, noted that Kang Bit-na's punishment was unusually emotional. Gremory learned of this from them, suggesting it might become a ticking time bomb for Kang Bit-na. Meanwhile, Han Da-on confronted Kang Bit-na, accusing her of killing the male demon. Despite her denial, Han Da-on was clearly unconvinced. Shortly after Han Da-on left, the criminal who had killed Han Da-on's family appeared. This time, he targeted Kang Bit-na's landlord, who was with Valak. Thus, he was unable to attack Kang Bit-na's landlord. Instead, he dragged Kang Bit-na's neighbor, a single mother, into a corner and brutally killed her. After a woman was pulled into an alley by a mysterious person, she was not immediately harmed. Just as the attacker was about to strike, two neighbors discovered them. The assailant tried to continue, but was scared off by the flashlight of Kang Bit-na's assistant. The woman narrowly escaped danger. The scene shifts to the woman at the police station making a statement and sketching the weapon the attacker intended to use. The female detective's expression grew serious upon seeing the weapon, as it was identical to one used by a killer 25 years ago, who was also responsible for the murder of Han Da-on's parents. Meanwhile, Kang Bit-na, who was dining, received a call from her assistant, requesting a meeting with a subordinate responsible for cleaning up a trial scene. It turns out the cleaner also handles human-related jobs, and had just learned that a neighbor's daughter's father had disappeared 2 days ago. Kang Bit-na usually does not intervene, but upon hearing the man might have been murdered, she casually wrote the father's name on a piece of glass. His absence indicated he had been killed. Elsewhere, a hiker accidentally discovered a body identified as the girl's father. As the police began their investigation, a philanthropist, and heir to a chaebol, Representative Choi, came under scrutiny. According to co-workers, the deceased was last seen being taken away by Choi during a demonstration and had not been seen since. A recording pen found by the police clearly captured the sound of Choi hitting the deceased with a golf ball. Choi claimed it was an accident and denied any involvement in the death. Han Da-on was powerless to change the situation. However, as the case moved to trial, Kang Bit-na was once again appointed as the presiding judge, evidently influenced by the chaebol's financial power. Kang Bit-na found some relief in the situation because if she could confirm that the deceased was murdered rather than having committed suicide, she could achieve another judicial accomplishment. Right after court, she used Han Da-on to locate the body and placed her hand on the deceased's head to reveal his experiences before death. It turned out that after being taken to a villa by Representative Choi, the old man was threatened with specimens and boiling water, but refused to compromise, insisting on improved working conditions. Over the past 2 years, 5 of his colleagues had died from illnesses. Despite his refusal to yield, a smile spread across Choi's face. As the old man left the villa, a car suddenly stopped beside him. The scene shifted to a golf course where Chairman Choi was beating him with a golf ball. Seconds later, the man was hung from a tree with a rope. However, when questioned by Han Da-on, Kang Bit-na chose to lie. Meanwhile, a female detective and her colleague were staking out Kang Bit-na's neighborhood to catch the killer. The colleague left to buy food due to hunger, but just as he left, the mysterious person appeared. Fortunately, the female detective managed to duck down in time to avoid being seen. In a panic, she tried to call her colleague, but the line was busy. Seeing the mysterious person walking away, she had no choice but to follow alone. After a fierce chase, she cornered the person against a wall. Just then, Kang Bit-na and Han Da-on returned, coincidentally meeting the colleague who had gone to buy food. While the three exchanged greetings, gunshots suddenly rang out in the distance, signaling trouble. They quickly ran towards the sound of the gunshots, but due to the many forks in the area, by the time Han Da-on and Kang Bit-na reached the scene of the crime, only a pool of blood remained, and the female detective had already disappeared. With the appearance of a clown, Chairman Choi's path to redemption officially began. All it took was a distraction to inject the hallucinogen, completing the work of the two assistants. When Chairman Choi woke up, he found himself on a golf course with the demon Kang Bit-na ready to strike. Clearly, golf requires skill, but the waiting made it even more despairing. However, as Kang Bit-na mastered the drive, each shot was perfect. Still, the sport was physically demanding, and after multiple energy replenishments, Kang Bit-na had exhausted all the golf balls. When Chairman Choi woke again, he found himself in a jungle. He tried to escape, but it was too late. A rope dropped from above brought him to experience choking despair. Yet, this was not the end. When he woke again, he was in a coffin. The narrow, unresponsive despair was chilling to even think about. These were just appetizers for the trial. As Chairman Choi broke free from the coffin, the entire amusement park lit up with neon lights. As the main character of the trial, the demon Kang Bit-na walked out from the haunted house. Kang Bit-na didn't waste words. With a snap of her fingers, two hellish beasts appeared before Chairman Choi. Although intimidating, the beasts were only there to hurt him. Once Chairman Choi entered the Ferris wheel voluntarily, Kang Bit-na snapped her fingers again, and the beasts disappeared without a trace, only to reappear on the Ferris wheel. This eerie presence would terrify anyone, but as utterly wicked people, they fought desperately, albeit fruitlessly. Instead, this allows Kang Bit-na to act with justification. After all, even as a demon, she cannot initiate an attack on humans. Now, even though the opponent is incapacitated, Kang Bit-na shows no sign of stopping. Chairman Choi tries to escape, but upon opening the cabin door, he realizes the Ferris wheel is high in the air. Even if he wanted to jump, Kang Bit-na wouldn't give him the chance. She unleashes a fierce, continuous attack that lasts for a full rotation of the Ferris wheel. Only then does Chairman Choi admit to his crimes, confessing that he ordered his men to kill an old man. However, when asked if he has reflected or received forgiveness from the victim, he frantically nods, claiming he has deeply repented to God and received forgiveness. Hearing this, Kang Bit-na explodes in anger, knocks him down without another word, pulls him up from the ground, and begins the final judgment. As the sword of judgment reappears, Chairman Choi's sinful life comes to an end. His crimes are then branded onto his forehead, and the gates of hell open on the haunted house door. The next second, Chairman Choi is dragged into hell with another figure added to the screaming portraits. However, after throwing Chairman Choi out of the Ferris wheel, Kang Bit-na turns around and her pupils dilate in shock. Han Da-on, who had been recording, appears behind her. Since the female detective disappeared, Han Da-on has been depressed. Kang Bit-na, on her way to the amusement park, didn't think much of encountering Han Da-on, merely asking if he needed help finding the murderer of his parents. Unexpectedly, Han Da-on not only refuses, but also pulls her into an embrace as they pass by, whispering sweet nothings while secretly attaching a tracker to the collar of Kang Bit-na's coat. Normally, Kang Bit-na would have noticed. At the moment, her heart was fluttering. She just threw down some harsh words and turned to leave. However, Kang Bit-na had already sensed Han Da-on's deceit, but had underestimated his shamelessness. So, when she gently asked for the cell phone video, Han Da-on suddenly threw sulfur powder. According to a slip of the tongue by an assistant, Han Da-on learned that demons fear sulfur powder, which would strip them of their powers for 2 hours upon contact. Now, Kang Bit-na, stripped of her powers, was no different from a human and quickly subdued by Han Da-on, who handcuffed her. Just then, a colleague unexpectedly called, reporting that they had found the female detective. Without hesitation, Han Da-on handcuffed Kang Bit-na to the Ferris wheel and rushed to the scene. To his shock, there was no ambulance, only police tape. A sense of foreboding overwhelmed him, and as expected, they found the female detective's body. Since his parents' murder, the female detective had raised Han Da-on like her own son. Now, not only his biological parents and brother were killed by a mysterious figure, but his foster mother had also been fatally harmed. No one could remain rational in such a situation. Meanwhile, as Kang Bit-na's pupils turned purple again, any restraint seemed like a joke. She vowed to make Han Da-on pay a heavy price. But as she approached the amusement park entrance, Han Da-on was coming towards her. Just as she was about to strike, Han Da-on smashed the phone on the ground first, leaving Kang Bit-na frozen in shock. Watching in astonishment, Han Da-on then picked up a brick and smashed the phone until it was unrecognizable before finally handing it over. However, Kang Bit-na merely scoffed at this gesture. She thought it was just a temporary measure by Han Da-on. But he then asked Kang Bit-na to find the murderer so he could tear him to pieces. At this point, Han Da-on had clearly turned dark, but Kang Bit-na could not agree. If Han Da-on took revenge himself, he would become a murderer too, and would end up being sent to hell by her. Han Da-on didn't care, and even declared he'd rather die by Kang Bit-na's hand than not avenge the deaths himself. In line with Kang Bit-na's nature, she agreed. But as she turned, a tear unexpectedly appeared at the corner of her eye. Demons don't have tears, and their appearance signals impending death. At that moment, Kang Bit-na looked at Han Da-on with disbelief, turning from incredulous grievance to reluctant acceptance and finally to resentment. After deciding to collaborate with the demon Kang Bit-na, Han Da-on immediately approached the female detective's corpse. Kang Bit-na only needed to place her hand on the victim's head to vividly reveal the experiences before the attack. It turned out that after the female detective had cornered the murderer, someone shot her in the leg from behind. While she was confronting a mysterious person, the murderer then stabbed her in the shoulder. Following the detective's gaze, the murderer's true face was finally revealed. Jong Soon-ho, the second son of a congressman. However, Kang Bit-na did not reveal the murderer's identity to Han Da-on, fearing that he might seek personal revenge and admitting that those she judges are unrepentant murderers. If Han Da-on truly wanted revenge, he would have to abandon many of his principles, since sometimes, to eliminate evil, one must resort to any means necessary. Yet Han Da-on showed through his actions that he too would resort to any means for revenge. At the memorial service, not only his direct boss, but also many media reporters were present, making this declaration a point of no return for him. However, Kang Bit-na, moved by his determination, did not notice that Gremory, tasked with executing any demon that shows emotion, had a strange look in her eyes upon seeing her tears. Later, she confronted Valak, revealing scars on her arm. Even though Kang Bit-na had been her superior, the mere act of shedding tears meant she had to face execution by Gremory's hands. Meanwhile, an old man collecting scrap passed by, helping Valak while his eyes suddenly sparkled. The scene shifted, and a large foot was aimed at Kang Bit-na, who was sleeping, shocking her as such disrespectful behavior was unprecedented in hell. The person turned out to be the old scrap collector, who led Kang Bit-na to a deserted ruin without answering her, and then his head gleamed with a golden light. A pair of white wings suddenly appeared, transforming the next second into a white-haired boy. He is the angel Gabriel, protector of the kind and the pitiful. Kang Bit-na was speechless. She had never before encountered someone who added so many titles before their name. During her first case, Kang Bit-na had sought the parents of the victim, and the boy had been the waiter at that time. According to him, he was the one who called the police in time to save the girl who attempted suicide in the first case, and was also the doctor who cured the cancer of the victim's daughter in the third case. However, his visit was not to expose a betrayal by an assistant, but rather to warn her. If she continued to associate with Han Da-on, one of them would surely die. Kang Bit-na, given her previous temperament, assumed it would be Han Da-on. Now, just thinking of Han Da-on getting hurt makes her heart flutter, suggesting that she might eventually die by Han Da-on's hand. The next day, the old man, transformed into an angel, was pulling a cart on the street when a sports car appeared at the end of the road, driven by someone who seemed disoriented. Suddenly, the man flashed a divine light, and the cardboard boxes on the car scattered. 5 students crossing the road rushed to help, and the sports car narrowly missed the last girl's leg before crashing into a roadside transformer. The driver was Jong Soon-ho, the congressman's youngest son, drawing Han Da-on's attention. Even the congressman, eager to exonerate his son, invited Kang Bit-na to judge his son not guilty. Kang Bit-na, enthusiastic about the situation, announced the future verdict at the banquet. Soon, the trial of Jong Soon-ho began, but to everyone's surprise, he disregarded his lawyer's advice, admitted in court to drug use and dangerous driving, and acknowledged Kang Bit-na's command to face his own actions. He turned his head to the side, displaying a defiant attitude. However, Kang Bit-na was not one to indulge such behavior. She stood up, approached him, and with her demonic strength, lifted him off the ground. "Have you ever killed anyone?" she asked. At her words, Jung Sunho's gaze started to dart around, his previous bravado instantly extinguished. Kang Bit-na got the answer she wanted and immediately declared a recess without looking back. Meanwhile, a new member named Jang Moon-jae, an investigator, joined Han Da-on's team. Despite the warm welcome from other colleagues, he insisted on working with Han Da-on and wanted to investigate a branding murder case. Han Da-on, already aware that the 4 victims were linked to Kang Bit-na, was very reluctant about this. His concern grew when Jang Moon-jae suddenly received a tip-off that operational surveillance was found near the crime scene. Han Da-on, having decided to collaborate with Kang Bit-na, was determined to keep her from suspicion. While reviewing the surveillance footage, Jang Moon-jae excused himself to the restroom. Han Da-on quickly reviewed the footage from the time of the incident and saw Kang Bit-na's sports car. Without a second thought, he deleted the footage. Just as Jang Moon-jae returned from the restroom, they stepped out of the store and he shockingly asked why the footage was deleted. He had seen Han Da-on deleting the footage, but had pretended not to know until that moment, clearly harboring ulterior motives. It was evident Jang Moon-jae was no ordinary investigator. As night fell, he appeared in Gremory's shop and casually took a kitchen knife from the shelf. It turned out that Jang Moon-jae was an assistant hired by Gremory. After discovering that the demon Kang Bit-na had shed tears, Gremory immediately headed to a remote wilderness. Then, as the pentagram engraving was completed, she only needed to chant a spell, and flames rapidly followed the lines. Gremory then sacrificed her own blood, causing a strange smoke to rise within the flames. When the smoke cleared, the Hell Overseer Baal arrived in the human world. However, as a die-hard fan of Kang Bit-na, she did not disclose Kang Bit-na's tears, but instead blamed Han Da-on, accusing him of hindering her idol's plans. Baal, uninterested in such trivial matters, delegated the issue to another demon, Paimon, Kang Bit-na's arch-enemy. During this time, an investigator, while pursuing a fugitive, was stabbed by the suspect. Paimon seized the opportunity to possess this investigator, who turned out to be Han Da-on's new partner, Jang Moon-jae. To eliminate Han Da-on, they still needed assistance from Kang Bit-na's most trusted individual, Valak. Although appearing timid, Valak later became key in saving Han Da-on. Even when confronted by Paimon, he struggled to speak clearly, but upon realizing their intention to make Kang Bit-na feel the pain of losing Han Da-on, Valak immediately regretted his involvement. Following Paimon's plan, Valak needed to steal Kang Bit-na's phone. Then, while Kang Bit-na was meeting with a councilman's young son, Valak used the phone to call Han Da-on, mimicking Kang Bit-na's voice to cry for help. Valak's special talent was voice imitation, capable of sounding like anyone. After making the call, his usefulness ended, and Gremory planned to kill him, but Valak was prepared and quickly scattered sulfur powder. At that moment, Kang Bit-na was in front of the councilman's son. Unable to confirm if he was the attacker, Kang Bit-na had no choice but to declare the young son innocent, but continued to threaten him with a wine bottle until he confessed. She was ready to pass judgment immediately, but the outcome was a huge disappointment. The suspect asked Kang Bit-na to kill him outright. Normally, the most vicious criminals fear death the most, resisting and begging for mercy when faced with danger. His reaction was not typical, indicating he was not the murderer of the female detective. This discovery deeply disappointed Kang Bit-na. Just then, a man suddenly grabbed her arm and she couldn't break free. As she was dragged into a booth, the man transformed into an old man, Angel Gabriel. It turned out, the male assistant's appearance couldn't enter the club, so he had to rely on an old man to pull Kang Bit-na out. He then revealed Paimon's plan and handed Kang Bit-na a suit of armor. Meanwhile, Han Da-on arrived at an abandoned warehouse and encountered the main culprit, Paimon. Faced with Han Da-on's concern for Kang Bit-na, Paimon produced her phone, falsely claiming he had sent her back to hell, infuriating Han Da-on. Han Da-on fell for the trap and attacked the demon first, giving Paimon a pretext to retaliate. The battle was one-sided, but just as Han Da-on was about to meet a gruesome end, Kang Bit-na arrived just in time. With a single blow, she sent the man flying. Clearly furious, the consequences were severe. The battle between the two demons was extremely brutal, even involving weapons, suggesting a cold weapon duel. However, As the man was thoroughly defeated, Kang Bit-na became overconfident. Just as she was about to deliver a fatal blow, Paimon suddenly chanted a spell. The next second, Kang Bit-na was pulled into an illusion, while the person on the ground. Suddenly, it was Han Da-on's face. Kang Bit-na was well aware, but still couldn't bring herself to strike fatally. She was quickly knocked down and nearly lost her life to a spear. But at that critical moment, Han Da-on's voice broke through. The illusion was shattered. Facing the first person who had ever put her in such disarray, Kang Bit-na was furious. With just a couple of moves, she disabled him completely, then picked up his weapon and ended his life. Seeing the villain defeated, Kang Bit-na forgot the importance of delivering the final blow. So, as she and Han Da-on were expressing their concern for each other, a man suddenly appeared behind her. At this critical moment, fortunately, Gremory intervened just in time. The demon was still not giving up until Kang Bit-na stepped on the weapon. It was the first time witnessing an execution from hell. Han Da-on, a human, gasped in fright. Watching Han Da-on approach slowly, Kang Bit-na thought he would blame her again. Just as she was about to explain, Han Da-on unexpectedly reached out to wipe the blood off her face. Although the crisis was averted, Kang Bit-na was still furious. She turned to look at the informant assistant. At this point, the assistant confessed their identity. Having human emotions meant betrayal for a demon. Her task was to find and punish these traitors. Unexpectedly, Kang Bit-na showed understanding. What she couldn't forgive was Gremory putting Han Da-on in danger. Kang Bit-na demanded Gremory never show up before him again. Gremory retorted that Kang Bit-na would surely die by Han Da-on's hand. Following this, Kang Bit-na drove to a warehouse. Spiders emerged from the ground and the door shut. After a cloud of smoke, Bael appeared. He then listed Kang Bit-na's crimes. With a cold laugh, Kang Bit-na admitted her crimes and was willing to die as atonement. However, Bael was relentless and insisted on taking Han Da-on to hell for punishment. Hearing this, Kang Bit-na became enraged. Knowing she was no match for Bael, she still decided to fight to the death. Overpowered, Kang Bit-na was defenseless. Bael then took her powers and turned Kang Bit-na into a mortal. That night, the three gathered together, and Kang Bit-na spoke to Han Da-on. She suspected that the serial killer Jay was Satan, and that he was likely the younger son. Although there was no evidence yet, Kang Bit-na had already thought of a solution. The next morning, she dressed up carefully and visited the congressman's home. Without preamble, she made a grand gesture. Kang Bit-na cut to the chase, expressing her desire to marry into prominence and enjoy wealth. The elder son mocked her, recalling how Kang Bit-na had previously broken off an engagement and puzzled over her current ploy. However, Kang Bit-na was not interested in him, but in the congressman's younger son. The congressman laughed and agreed, while the younger son angrily left the room. Kang Bit-na excused herself to the bathroom and quietly went upstairs, just in time to see the younger son coming out of a secret room. Startled, he could only warn her to stop. Kang Bit-na ignored his threats. Taking advantage of the moment, the congressman and his elder son went out to play golf. Kang Bit-na visited the congressman's home. After finding an excuse to send the nanny away, she quickly took action, unaware the younger son was watching her from upstairs. Kang Bit-na entered the secret room and found it unusually spacious with no cell signal. As a demon, she wasn't afraid. The pool was filled with blood-colored flowers, and a painting on the wall caught her attention. Kang Bit-na didn't understand why it depicted a large iron door, but didn't dwell on it. As she turned, the candles in the painting eerily went out. Kang Bit-na continued forward, pushed open a door, and entered another room. She searched around but found no useful clues. As Kang Bit-na was about to leave, she passed by the painting again, and noticed the extinguished candles. With skepticism, she reached out. Kang Bit-na walked into the painting and entered through the iron door. On the table, there was an axe, and displayed on the walls were various body parts from victims. Before Kang Bit-na could react, she heard noises from outside. She quickly restored the scene to its original state, but as soon as she stepped out, she was struck by the younger son. Gremory seemed to have made a decision, grabbed something from the table, and left. Since Han Da-on couldn't reach Kang Bit-na, he called the assistant. Shocked by the truth, he rushed to the congressman's house. By then, Kang Bit-na had been badly beaten, and lacking strength, was no match. She was soon knocked unconscious. When she woke up, she found herself back in the same room. It was then that the younger son revealed the truth about the killing. At the time, Kang Bit-na was engaged to the elder son. On the day she visited their home, she accidentally entered the secret room and discovered another room. A camera caught her attention. Curious, she turned it on, only to be horrified by the content showing the elder son humiliating his mother. Shocked by this revelation, Kang Bit-na could not believe her fiancé was such a monster. As she panicked and fled, the elder son did not stop her, but instead went to find his younger brother, who was suffering from drug withdrawal. For just a small bag of drugs, the younger son agreed to become an executioner. Right after Kang Bit-na sent a text to call off the engagement, the younger son came looking for her. Even though Kang Bit-na begged for mercy, the younger son still stabbed her. Now she was about to die by his hand for the second time. Just as the younger son was about to act, Han Da-on arrived. Gremory appeared and stopped him, handing over the villa's blueprints and mentioning the secret room. That's when Han Da-on learned that Kang Bit-na had lost her strength. He drove straight in and rescued Kang Bit-na in a critical moment. While he vented his anger, the younger son took the opportunity of Han Da-on untying her to quickly leave the scene. Kang Bit-na told Han Da-on that the younger son was not Jay. The real Jay was either the congressman or the elder son. Han Da-on didn't care about these details. He embraced Kang Bit-na tightly. Soon after, the police surrounded the area. The two returned were confused because of Gremory's help. Kang Bit-na not only forgave Gremory, but also generously let him strike back. Gremory did not hesitate to act. That night, Kang Bit-na approached Baal again, using clues about Satan to regain her powers. They then found the fleeing younger son, beat him up, put him in a car, poured gasoline over it, and Kang Bit-na set it on fire. The younger son was killed in the car. The police cordoned off the area and found a note on the ground stating, "My dad and brother killed me." Consequently, the congressman and the elder son were summoned to the police station for questioning. Naturally, they denied everything, especially as the surveillance at the scene had been tampered with. In the end, the police had no choice but to let them go. Kang Bit-na attended the younger son's funeral, smiling provocatively in public and congratulating the two on one less problem. When it came time for the final farewell, during the congressman's dramatic performance, the police finally received the autopsy results. The body in the car was not the younger son, but a fugitive who had disappeared 10 years ago. Soon after, the younger son arrived at the police station. It turned out that after regaining her strength, Kang Bit-na had found the fleeing younger son and decided to use him to catch Jay. The axe he was holding was the murder weapon used by Jay. Kang Bit-na questioned whose it was, but the younger son refused to say. Kang Bit-na saw through his reluctance and urged him to give up the idea because the congressman and the elder son would only kill him, and she was the only one who could help him. Seeing the younger son still hesitant, Kang Bit-na made a bet with him. The younger son proceeded as planned to seek help from the elder son and the congressman. If Kang Bit-na was right, then the younger son would have to cooperate with her plan. He then called the elder son and disclosed his location. Expecting help, he was unaware of their real intentions. The people who came to meet him soon revealed their true purpose and started attacking him in the car. At this critical moment, 4 people stopped them, easily overpowered the assailants, and erased their memories with their powers. The younger son agreed to cooperate with Kang Bit-na and helped set up the scene. Finally, Kang Bit-na ignited the gasoline, successfully diverting the attention of the congressman and the elder son. The younger son went to the police station to surrender and submitted the axe as evidence. Faced with police interrogation, the younger son stubbornly refused to admit to any crimes, only mentioning how his mother had starved to death. The boy picked up an ashtray and fiercely struck his father's head, simply because he was the congressman's illegitimate son. The congressman mocked his birth as a mistake until the father stopped breathing. It was then that the elder son regained his senses. As he stood bewildered, a demon appeared behind him. The demon had witnessed the entire incident and saw potential in the elder son, so he made a deal with him. The elder son was to commit murders for him, collect organs from the bodies, and also help find Kalen. In exchange, he would grant the elder son power and status. The demon possessed the congressman, becoming the nominal father of the elder son, who did not disappoint him. Enjoying the thrill of the hunt, he became the serial killer, Jay, feared by the police. However, from the moment the younger son surrendered, the elder son panicked completely. He hurried back home as the younger son submitted the murder weapon as evidence, signaling that their crimes were about to be exposed. Unfazed, Satan shifted all the blame onto him. The elder son was furious and thus revealed his trump card. He had already found Kaylin. Satan was clearly alarmed and had no choice but to comply. He then entered the barrier within the mural and found all the collected limbs there, but the axe on the table was missing. As the younger son, being human, could not enter this place, he thought of Kang Bit-na and finally understood everything. Satan opened the partition, and inside lay the body of the younger son's mother. Upon learning that Kang Bit-na was a demon, the elder son wished he could kill her right then. Satan recognized his fear and promised to give him all his assets and safely get him out of the country, provided he handed over Kaylin. The elder son, not foolish enough to trust blindly, feared for his life after the handover. Thus, they decided to make the exchange at the airport. Meanwhile, Kang Bit-na kept a close watch on the elder son using her powers. Noticing him return to his office, he took a handgun from his drawer, then went to a sandbox model and opened a hidden compartment, retrieving a black crystal pulsating like a heart. Seeing this, Kang Bit-na quickly acted. After getting what she wanted, Satan also saw the long-desired Kaylin. Just as he was about to grab it, a gun was pointed at his head. He knew the demon's weakness. If the human body dies, the demon inside also perishes. Therefore, the elder son didn't consider Satan a threat at all. Subsequently, the elder son arrived at the airport, where two people suddenly stopped him. As the man grappled with him, the woman stabbed him in the thigh, causing him intense pain. It was then he realized she was Satan. Satan arranged the limbs on a table, preparing to complete the ritual when Kang Bit-na finally arrived. She flung Satan away, and recognizing the dagger she materialized as that of Justicia, Satan realized who she was. Just as Kang Bit-na was about to send him to hell, Satan began to manipulate again. In an instant, she found herself in an illusion created by Satan, depicting the wedding she had always dreamed of. Friends scattered flowers non-stop at the scene, and even angels attended. Kang Bit-na's face was filled with a joyful smile. In front of everyone, Han Da-on placed a ring on her finger. However, just as the next part of the ceremony was to begin, it suddenly started raining. When Kang Bit-na regained her senses, she found Satan chanting a spell. Seizing the opportunity, Satan picked up Kaylin, attempting to complete an eternal transformation, but Kang Bit-na stopped him again. The illusion had revealed Kang Bit-na's true desires to Satan. He continued to deceive her, advising her not to trust Baal, as he was the worst of demons. Kang Bit-na scoffed, stabbing him with her dagger. Pulling it out, Satan fell heavily to the ground as a black mist flew out of his body, revealing his true form. Kang Bit-na was shocked, as any other demon would have already descended to hell. The next second, they were outside, and after a struggle, Satan was losing. Seeing his defiance, Kang Bit-na summoned the gates of hell, pretended to throw a heart into it, and then stabbed him in the heart with her dagger. That night, the severely injured elder son attempted to flee, but the boat malfunctioned halfway. At that moment, Han Da-on rushed out. After a shootout, the elder son ran out of bullets first. Han Da-on, fueled by years of anger, fiercely reprimanded him and revealed his identity as a survivor. Unintimidated, the elder son even mentioned Chief Kim again. Chief Kim, on the brink of death and eager to leave a clue, took advantage of their inattention to carve the elder son's name on his arm and wrote a J on the ground. Realizing something, the elder son searched and indeed found the name on her arm. Without mercy, he then cut off her arm. Hearing this, Han Da-on was furious and wished he could kill him immediately. At a critical moment, he remembered Kang Bit-na's words. If Han Da-on killed the elder son, Kang Bit-na would sacrifice all she had as a demon to protect Han Da-on in hell. However, if Han Da-on spared him, Kang Bit-na would offer everything she had as a judge to make the elder son pay for his crimes and ensure justice was served. With this in mind, Han Da-on ultimately swallowed his anger. The serial killer Jay was finally arrested. The next day, as everyone awaited the trial, Baal unexpectedly approached. He acknowledged Kang Bit-na's efforts in retrieving Kaylin and sending Satan back to hell, deciding to absolve Kang Bit-na of all her sins. His final task was to send the elder son to hell. Otherwise, Kang Bit-na would be the one dragged to hell.